Okay, so why don't I listen to my parents' or grandparents' financial advice? Well, don't tell them. I actually do because they are smart and they actually have really good advice. But one thing we have to realize is that today is completely different, obviously, than 10 or 15 or 25 or 30 years ago when our parents or grandparents, probably our parents, were starting to enter the workforce and starting to save and invest, right? One of the biggest mistakes that I see people making is taking advice from grandparents and their parents that is outdated, right? So again, we have to remember when our parents were entering the workforce, 60s, 70s, 80s. Take the 80s for example, right? Interest rates were crazy high. Not only buy things, but also interest that you were earning. You could get a CD that was paying 10% interest. Money market accounts were paying 11 or 12% interest. Treasury bills were paying 11 or 12% interest. And today you're lucky to find a money market account or a CD that pays 1 or 2 or 3%, right? If you're lucky. And so the difference is crazy. It's huge. But there's still a lot of parents and grandparents giving advice to kids or grandkids on using those types of vehicles for their saving and investing because that's what they were using, right? 20, 25, 30 years ago. And again, the advice is just outdated, right? The other piece of advice that I see a lot of parents or even grandparents giving to millennials, younger generations, is to max out their 401k, right? Heavily invest, heavily save in their 401k. Now, again, your parents or grandparents were starting to save in the 70s and the 80s, 90s, and the 401k program just came out. It made a lot of sense because of how many tax brackets we had back then, right? In the 1980s, there were 15 different tax brackets. Today, there are 7, half as many. And so getting a tax deduction for contributing to a 401k did make a lot of sense. And a lot of times people would drop down 1 or 2 tax brackets, right? Because it would lower their income. Today, that just does not happen for a majority of the people. Our tax brackets are fewer and they're so big that those deductions from contributing so much to a 401k, it doesn't change people's tax brackets all the time like it used to. But that idea is still passed along, right? That pre-tax, maxed out 401k is still the best place you can save money. And in today's situation, right, we want to be able to diversify our tax liabilities. And that means pre-tax and after-tax. We don't want all of our tax liabilities in retirement or all of our accounts to be taxed, right? To be a tax liability. We want to have some tax-free income. Majority of 401ks are pre-tax, so we want to be able to diversify those types of accounts, right? And utilize after-tax accounts. But again, grandparents, parents still kind of pushing those ideas that are outdated because of how their situation was. Related to that, another huge misconception, and I've done several videos on this, is that, and this is passed on by parents and grandparents, right? That when you retire, you'll be in a lower tax bracket, right? This isn't even true for your parents and grandparents anymore because tax brackets have changed, but that idea is still passed along, right? I hear it from people all the time, well, I'm going to retire and so I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket. Again, because of the fewer tax brackets that we have now, it's just not the case for a majority of people, right? They don't drop down in tax brackets. 80s, 15 different tax brackets. People drop down 1 or 2 tax brackets when they went down in income. Today, it just doesn't happen. And so those pieces of advice we should not be listening to, right? Take the good pieces and implement them and listen to them, but don't listen to every single piece of advice that maybe your grandparents or parents have, because a lot of it is outdated, and we need to be aware of the things that are available now that can benefit us. So I don't listen to my parents' financial advice, or at least not all of it. You probably shouldn't either, or rethink the advice that you have been given and maybe have been listening to.